Hey there, I'm Chris Benetti, host of the Smart Author podcast. In this episode, I speak with Lise Cartwright of Hustle and Groove, and we discussed how she's written 37 books and why they have all been self-published. Some of the main topics we'll be covering today include the campaign behind her USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller, how Lise nurtures and converts 20% plus of her email subscribers into her membership, and what she does to keep her members engaged so that they stick around for the long run. At the end of this episode, make sure you visit our website where you can find the show notes plus the links mentioned with Lise. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you subscribe so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. And if you're struggling with book sales, head over to smartauthormedia.com/audit to get a free audit and a clear plan to get your book sales back on track. Now, let's head over to this awesome interview. Hey, Smart Authors. Welcome to another episode of the Smart Author podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lise Cartwright of Hustle and Groove. Lise, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Chris.
So, Lise, in the next 30, 60 seconds, can you give everyone a bit of a catch up of everything that you've done in the online space since 2012?
Wow, that's 30 seconds. Okay, I'll try. So quick, brief background. Started out as a freelance writer, as a side hustle in 2011, quit my job in 2012. Was a freelance writer for about 2-3 years, transitioned into becoming an author, was an author full-time for 2.5 years, transitioned into being an online coach and kind of strategic coach while still authoring books. And that's kind of where I sit now. I definitely align with being a coach, definitely towards the creative entrepreneur space.
Awesome. So you wrote your book quite a while ago, not quite a while ago, but 8 years ago, you wrote your first book. How, what prompted that? And after you wrote it, how did that impact your business?
Yeah, so I am someone, and I would say that most people listening to this will relate. I'm very multi-passionate. And so the reason why I quit my job back in 2012 wasn't to become a full-time freelance writer for the rest of my life, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So for me, being a freelance writer was like this bridge business. And then I can't even remember what kind of triggered it, but I started seeing a lot of people in kind of the online space writing books and publishing them on Amazon. And I was like, well, I can write. I don't have any special degree in writing, but I've been writing and people have been paying me to write. So I'm assuming I can write. And I was like, okay, what would it look like if I was just writing about things that I actually cared about and getting paid for it versus writing about finance and tires and whatever other random stuff I would be doing for clients. So that's kind of what attracted me initially. And then I think I did about 6 months of research trying to figure out how to write a book and then how to self-publish it. Back then I was living in New Zealand and Amazon isn't really a thing in New Zealand. Even now, there's no specific store. So I had no idea what that was going to look like. And so I joined a course, and I think it was around August 2014, and went through that process, and 90 days later had published my first book. And that's how that journey started.
Wow. And so you mentioned you went on to be an author like full time for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did that work out? Like, was it pretty stressful? Was it quite lucrative back then? Like, yeah, can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I've always been someone who just kind of just goes, I'm just going to see what happens, right? I don't stress too much about things because everything is figure outable and you cannot break anything online that you can't fix, right? So I've just always approached everything that I've done in my business as an experiment. So I was like, okay. And I saw somebody else again in the online space who had this publishing business for herself where she was writing very short books and publishing them like every 2 weeks.
Wow.
And she had something like 78 books that she had published in a 12-month period. Now, I was not looking to do something like that, but after I'd published my first book in 2014, I thought, okay, if I want to transition out of being a freelance writer, what would it look like to become a full-time author, and how could I do that? And so when you understand a platform like Amazon and you understand their algorithm, which is geared towards new content, that's all Amazon cares about, is serving up new content to its readers. So if you as an author understand that and are someone who can create and publish fairly regularly, you'll be rewarded. So for me, I was just like, okay, what if I started off 2015 and set myself this challenge where I did 7 books in 7 weeks? Do not recommend it for anyone listening to this, right? It is, you will burn yourself out very quickly. However, it was an experiment, and I learned a lot of things from that, but that really kickstarted the backlog of books that I have, kind of that catalog that I had. And then from once I kind of did that 7 books in 7 weeks, I just started writing and publishing a book a month. And through doing that, I was earning anywhere from 4 to 5K Australian a month. And so for me, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing that. Now, I did that for about two and a half years. And then, of course, I just kind of hit this phase where I was just like, you know what? I do not enjoy writing anymore because I was doing so much of it, right? Yeah. So I was like, okay, how can I transition? And so for me, the natural progression was into turning into a course creator. I had all of these books. And I'm a nonfiction author. I should probably clarify that I'm not a fiction author. But as a nonfiction author, having all of these assets, I was like, well, now I can just create courses and then head on into the coaching space. And that's exactly what I did. So that was around 2017 that I kind of started making that transition of being still writing, just not as consistently. So more like 3 books a year instead of, 12 plus.
So being that you published most of your books on Amazon, obviously you don't get to control the audience on Amazon. How did you make that transition into courses? And like, what was your strategy for building an audience? Like, it almost sounds like you kind of would have had to start somewhat from scratch. Like, you're a smart person. You probably know how to take people off of Amazon and build lists and stuff like that. But, with that, you lose the customer on Amazon, thought process. What was your plan for transitioning?
Yeah. So for me, I'm always making sure that my books are set up from an interior perspective to optimize marketing. So, if you've been in this author space for any length of time, you'll know that you need to have a lead magnet at the very front of your book, and you need to mention it at least 2 other times. And then right at the end of your book, you probably want to do the same thing, or some next step that encourages someone to join your email list. So I did that right from the start. So even when I was a full-time author, I already understood that. And so I was building up my email list that entire time. And I get around 50 to 60% of people who purchase my books actually join my email list.
Nice.
Because I offer more content for them to access that supports the book. And I think that's the key, is why I get people into my email list relatively easy, is because the content that they're accessing supports them as they're going through the book, or gives them further additional resources. So you don't want to just give them anything that is completely unrelatable. You definitely don't want to give them another book, because that never works. People are savvy now, right? Like, I'm reading this book and now you're giving me another book to read. Like, I don't have the time. So I had all of that kind of baked in right from the start. So the transition to course creator and coach was relatively seamless. The part that was difficult was the launching process, right? Like, launching a book is quite different to launching a course. And now we're stepping into the realm of like email marketing, and those types of things. So yeah, so that's basically what I did. Is I still to this day utilize the books, bring around 5 to 10 people a day into my world, and I'm not doing anything to promote my books or anything like that. And now I actually use my books as assets. So depending on, kind of what I'm doing, I do a lot of collaborations where I end up giving a book away for free. Now, if I'm doing that, I'm always going to make sure that I'm optimizing on the back end. I have funnels and all those types of things like that. But so because I have those assets, now I'm able to use them in whatever way I wish, because I'm not enrolled in KDP Select. That's a very important distinction. If you're ever going to just kind of gift your book away, it can't be enrolled in KDP Select because it violates their terms of service.
Sure. Of the people you say that join your list, how many on average do you think would ascend or like continue into your other programs or products that you have?
Yeah, so it depends. I certainly have that data for the last 3 years, because now I have a membership. It's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have 2 memberships, one that's priced at $9 and one that's priced at $49. So the uptick into the $9 membership is essentially a no-brainer for most people, particularly if they're wanting to create a digital business. So I would say on average, the conversion is around 20% from that to there. And at the end of the day, if someone, if they don't convert within kind of that first 30 days, they will eventually convert, because the amount of stuff that they get access to at that $9 level is insane, right? And it's on purpose, because when I started, if you look at the coaching space just in general, to access a coach typically costs you a ton of money. And when you're just starting out, you don't know what your business is going to look like. You don't know when you're going to start making money. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to make something as accessible as possible, with as much support as possible. And that's why it's priced at that point.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, for me, I pay people thousands of dollars a month for mentorship and coaching. And that's not even like, I mean, I did this intentionally. My coaches don't give me digital assets to consume. It's more just like direct coaching and feedback on specific things, which, you go through different levels. And I would assume everyone here would be at a level where that stuff would be more applicable. But generally speaking, I think that's fantastic, because even anyone who's still 9-to-5 grind or, is in transition, $9 is affordable for everyone. Like, that's just like, don't have Macca's this week, like McDonald's for my American friends. And you pretty much, you paid for Lisa's membership for the whole month. Like, you're pretty sweet. So that's a fantastic model. What's your strategies, or like, what do you do to continuously engage? Because like you've just said that, generally speaking, everyone who joins your list will eventually convert to the $9 membership. How do you keep people in the loop? How do you keep them engaged? Is it publishing more books, or is it, you're very consistent with email marketing and things like that? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah. So, I've gone through so many different things. I've literally tried all the things. So up until the beginning of last year, which was 21, my gosh, I'm so losing years. I had a free Facebook group. So I was on that Facebook group model. A lot of people, love Facebook groups. Personally, I'm making a massive shift off social media, right? Actively being on social media. I might be my age. I don't know. I feel like it might be this age group where we're just kind of like, man, you know what? I don't actually feel like sharing what I'm doing right now. And so because I've cultivated the email list that I've cultivated, I have really good engagement there. So I was just like, you know what? I have a blog that has 400 plus blog posts on it. So I don't need to write any more content, but I can repurpose and reshare that. So it's not that I'm not on social media. It's just that it's all automated. So I'm not jumping on and doing lives or anything like that. So I closed my Facebook group at the beginning of last year, my free one, because I was transitioning into the memberships. And with having a $9 membership, that's where a lot of my engagement is. So I have a community that hangs out on Heartbeat for both of my memberships. And that's where a lot of my, content or just my engagement is. And then I have a weekly email called Chart Your Own Course. And that's typically how I just keep in touch with people. So I've done all the things when it comes to email marketing too, right? I experimented. I tried emailing every single day. I've tried emailing 3 times a week. I've tried emailing once a month. And I just kind of landed on this space of, I'm just going to do once a week, give people all the things. So I do all the things that you're not supposed to. I don't know, I think there's probably 3 call to actions in my email. And most email marketing gurus say 1 call to action. But at the end of the day, I understand someone's inbox, like what that looks like, because I know what my inbox looks like. And the reality is I typically hold some emails over until I have time to kind of go through them. Yep. And so I appreciate when someone actually puts in all the most important information and all the links, so then I can go and click on all the things versus getting an email 3 or 4 times a week. Now, there are some people that I still subscribe to who do email daily, and it works quite well. I don't find it a bother, but they're very short and sweet. And I just have way too much to say, so I can't keep them short and sweet. So they're sectioned, but there's always fairly a lot of content. And when I'm writing those emails, I write them in the moment. I don't schedule them ahead of time. Again, I have an unscalable business on purpose because I want to do the way that I do things this way. But yeah, so I typically have some type of actionable piece of content for them. It's Chart Your Own Course. Here's something for you to actually do in your business. And then there's also opportunities for them to maybe join Digital Business Lab if they're ready for it. And then I also have what's called the monthly promotion palooza, which is only for Digital Business Lab members to promote their offers through. So that is linked in there. And so it gives people the opportunity to get in front of my audience with their offers. So this is what I do inside DBL, because a lot of people, when they're starting out, don't know how to launch, don't have an email list. So that's part of that process, is promoting. If you've got an offer and you've done the work, I'm happy to share it with my audience.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the weekly cadence makes sense. And people who want to get more access and more consistent access would join the membership, right? That's the access point. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So one of your books is actually a Wall Street Journal bestseller, a co-book, right? How many books does it take to, how many sales does it take to become Wall Street?
That's a loaded question. So if you ever want to hit, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, those types of bestseller lists, it is at least an 8-month process. And so the process was this: we all contributed $500 into advertising, because to hit either of those best-selling lists, it's not just Amazon sales. So you have to sell a certain amount on Amazon, you have to sell a certain amount in Barnes and Noble, a certain amount on Google. There's multiple places that you have to sell in order to hit those best-selling lists. So we were running BookBub ads, which are probably the best ones because they give you multiple access points, right? So if someone is subscribed to BookBub as a reader, they get the opportunity to choose where they purchase your book from, because BookBub promotes not just Amazon, but it promotes Barnes and Noble, Google, whatever, Apple, all of those things. So we had the book listed in all of those places, and basically it was on pre-order for that whole time. And that's the strategy, right? If you need that runway to get the sales. So when we launched that book, we were just focusing on ebook. So that's the other thing, right? It's ebook versus print. It's a lot harder to hit the bestseller with a print version. So we were obviously going for ebook. And so over that period of time, we were aiming to get 500 orders a month. So that gives you an idea of what we had to do to hit the bestseller lists. And so that, on the day that launched, all those sales dropped, and that's what counted. And you have to maintain that for about 7 days for that to kind of be the case. So yeah, it was intense in terms of promoting it, making sure that we had the breadth of sales versus, when you're publishing on a platform like Amazon, all you're worried about is Amazon. You don't have to do anything else. So yeah, so very targeted. We all did different things like podcast interviews to promote it. So we also offered incentives, right? Because why is someone pre-ordering your book 6 months out? Right? Yeah. Like, what's the incentive to do that? Aside from the fact that if you're a fiction author, if someone is consuming your books and they love your books, like I do it all the time, I will pre-order a book that is not coming out until next year because I love that author. But nonfiction's a little bit different, right? We want answers now. So yeah, so we all contributed bonuses and stuff like that. So yeah, it was full on. It was full on for at least 6 of those 8 months.
Right.
In terms of marketing.
The book launches, you basically have 4,000 sales drop immediately. And then for 7 days, you have to,
you've got to kind of maintain in order to be able to kind of hit the bestseller, right? So it didn't stop there. We still had to keep promoting it, but now it's a lot easier to promote because now it's live. So people get immediate access.
Instant, yeah.
So yeah. And I mean, there were, I think, 22 authors in that book. So we were all established, all had really good email lists, all those types of things. So yeah, so you can 100% do it. You just need to keep in mind that you're going to need to spend some money. You need to put it on pre-order, and you need, a ton of stuff happening in order to hit those lists. It's doable. It just takes a bit of time, time and effort, which is why I've never done it for my individual books, because I'm just like, I don't have the time to actually do that for an individual book when there are other things that I could be doing. It was it was a fun experience for me. I was just like, I'm just going to see what happens, right? Like, let's see what this looks like. Yeah. And I mean, the other authors in that book are all good friends of mine. Yeah, they all are amazing. So yeah, it's an experience.
Would you say that there was...
go to do it?
Yeah, I could imagine how intense it would be, especially, it's probably good that there's several other authors there, because you guys can spread the load a little bit, and also, the investment as well. Would you say that there would have been any sort of net positive besides saying you're a Wall Street bestseller, anything like that?
So, I mean, obviously you get from within that initial time frame, because you have the ability to, get people on your email list. So definitely from an email list perspective, but no, I wouldn't say that I saw a massive uptick in sales on my other books, that type of thing. It's to me, it's a vanity metric. Yeah. At the end of the day, does my audience care that I have this? Probably not, right? I don't even say it really. I was just, yeah, that's right. I did hit that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that now I'm getting special royalties and stuff like that, right? It is and so that is why, for me, and I don't worry about New York Times bestseller list, which is, between you and I and everyone listening, an absolute crock of
BS. Yeah.
Right. It's a vanity metric. Sure. And for me, the reason I started writing was so that I could help people. And that's all I care about.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I want the content to be accessible. And so, yeah, I'm probably annoying a few people by saying that, but at the end of the day, unless your goal is to, get on a talk show, right? That's where something like a New York Times bestseller makes sense. But if you don't have that aspiration, then why bother? Because the effort to be a New York Times bestseller means you have to go traditionally publish.
Yes. Well, I mean, I actually want to ruffle some feathers there as well. while we're at it.
Let's do it.
So you've written 37 books as of the latest one that's going to be coming out soon. Well, I think it's already out. And you've decided to self-publish all of them. Can you tell me why you've intentionally done that, and why, you know, the traditional, even for the first, like most people are like, oh, I have to do it with someone, like for a handhold, or, you know, for this and that. Like, why did you take that path?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the fact that I like to DIY everything, and you know, I like to have full control. And so for me, when I started looking into the self-publishing versus traditional publishing, the thing that there were two key things that made me just kind of go, why would you go traditional when you have this here? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So number one, and this is the biggest, is that from a royalty perspective, you get to keep 70 or 60 to 70% of your royalty if you self-publish, versus the maximum that you will receive as if you go traditional publishing is 15%. That's a huge difference. And the second, well, there's actually a few more reasons than that, but the second piece is that you write the book, your name is on it, but that's all that you have to do with the book. Once the publisher has it, that's it. You cannot input anything in terms of cover. They decide. They also decide on the pricing, you know, all of the things, and they have creative control over the actual book itself, right? So they can go in and change the content. So if you are going to traditional publishing, you definitely want to make sure that you're going to work with a publisher that at least listens. There are some out there. They're not all bad. But the other thing that I think is super important to remember is that yes, it's great. They'll take care of editing, formatting, publishing, and getting it into bookstores and stuff like that. But they still expect you to do the marketing. And so I'm just like, well, why wouldn't I take on all of that, keep 60 to 70% of my royalty? I'm going to have to market it anyway. You know, so that ultimately was, and you know, I like to have full control. It's my assets. It's my my knowledge. And why would I hand that over to someone else? Now, there are times where it does make sense. So if you have built up enough of a platform where you know that the marketing piece is going to be super simple, like that you can, you know, because they give you an advance on your royalty when you go traditionally published. So however much that advance is, you don't start getting paid for your book until you essentially pay back that advance through the marketing effort that you do.
Yeah.
So if you have a large platform, and I am saying large, like I'm talking 50,000 email subscribers plus, before it would even make sense to go down the path of traditional publishing, why would you? So I know, I don't know if you know Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning. I know Hal, and Hal self-published the first edition of The Miracle Morning, and he went with a traditional publisher for his book, The Miracle Equation, which I think he only published that a few years ago. And I chatted to him about it. I said, so Hal, you are so on board with self-publishing. Why did you go traditional? He said, because they basically fronted up with close to $1 million in royalty advancement. So he said it was life-changing for my family. And I am confident that I have a platform to be able to pay that back within a set period of time. And, you know, Hal's got 500,000 people on his email list, plus he has a massive following on social media. So yeah, he's 100% see it. However, what I thought was super interesting is that that same publisher offered to take the Miracle Morning. And he said, nah, he makes like 10K plus a month off the Miracle Morning. So why is he reducing that just because this publisher, and he's done all the work? So, you know, I look at that. So I can see, like, I understood what he was doing, but he goes, I would never, now that I've gone through this experience, I would never traditionally publish again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So interesting. I mean, when I do my audits with clients, essentially the biggest thing here is like if they have a publisher, it's like it's almost impossible for me to provide marketing services
do
for them
anything. Yeah.
because, I'm probably not going to get Amazon management access to their ads, because the publisher
Yep.
holds also, is the author of the
It's
book
through
on
their
Amazon.
KDP account. Yep.
And so like that's extremely difficult. And then let alone that, like if I did even get that opportunity, they have to front the marketing costs and,
Mm-hmm.
15% after, the publisher's taking their cut and Amazon's taking their cut, right? Like you don't really have much money to actually have a break-even book sale. And that's really my goal when I'm working with nonfiction authors. And then, when it comes to the funnel, like, sure, you get copies, but like you're also, kind of out of pocket there as well. And it's like, we have to have a dialed in funnel to, have good ascension in place, direct in funnel for you to even, again, have a break even front end. And it just makes it extremely difficult. Plus you kind of like having to tippy toe around what the publisher wants and says is okay.
Yeah, it is. It does. And I get it. I get why people, but the thing is, and the way that I kind of look at it is that it's just because you don't know, right? Like everything is overwhelming at the beginning when you don't know something. But when you start, like, particularly the first time that you upload your book to KDP, it is step by step. Like you literally just go through and answer questions. Like if you can do that, then you can 100% self-publish. And there are so many companies out there now where you can get your cover design and formatting all done in one so that you don't have to worry about doing that yourself. Like I started out doing my own formatting. Never ever recommend doing your own cover design unless you're a graphic designer. Have at it. Otherwise, don't recommend it. So you can. I just don't recommend the formatting interior. It just becomes a headache that you just don't need.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan for just kind of outsourcing that, but you can get the production of the book done for around 1,000, maybe less. It depends. And then it's all yours from there. It's just uploading is free on Amazon, right? It doesn't cost you anything to do that. And then you get your author copies at like $3. And like it's a no-brainer, but when you understand it, I think that's the problem, right? Is and I think about it when I was at the beginning, I was like, holy crap, how do you write a book? Right? Like I just felt so intimidated by the prospect of actually writing the book. When if I step back, I was like, well, I've been writing articles and blog posts for clients that are like 3,000 words. It's just, if you approach the book like each chapter is a blog post, it's easy. It's just that we get in our heads, right? Like it's very much, it's why I wrote my book, I Am an Author, because of that whole process that I myself had gone through. And then once you've gone through it, you're just like, what was I even worried about?
I love that. And I mean, the smart authors here listening are generally business owners. They're willing to invest money because it makes sense to them to outsource those kind of services because they, they're running their business. They're doing more profitable tasks.
Focus on that.
Higher worth tasks. So I think it absolutely makes sense to at least just do the research on what's going to be the best option for you where you're at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap up the episode here. Lise, do you have anywhere you would like to send people?
Yeah, so you can just come and stalk me on hustleandgroove.com. That's like my main home. And that's where you'll learn. I actually have resources specifically for authors. So you'll see that's linked at the top. And just come join the email list. You'll get my weekly email. And if you are so inclined, you can check out the digital business site too.
Awesome. And I'll make sure everything's linked up. And as a side note, I did join Lisa's email list yesterday. So I'm super looking forward to getting that weekly digest.
Awesome.
Thanks again for coming on, Lise. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks so much.
What an awesome episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing on your podcast platform of choice so you get notified every single time a new episode releases. And if you're struggling with your book sales, head over to smartauthormedia.com/audit to get a free audit of your book sales to see where we can help you bridge the gap between not many sales to a lot of sales. It's a free resource call that we have together where I give you some clear action steps that you can take to take your stuff from broken to selling. I'll see you over there. Thanks again for listening.